So we finally got the news Raising Kanan will be returning on March the 7th. They released a very short clip of Kanan picking up a bag of cash, looking at his pager with a release date. But we also got some exclusive first look images for season 4, which I did break down in the evening. And one of the images which stood out not just for me, but I'm sure for everyone else, was unique. With a stitched up forehead, he really did look scary. And based on the synopsis, it does seem like he's going to be a real menace, at least in the first half of the season. And that's going to be the topic of discussion in today's breakdown. We're going to take a look at the synopsis in a bit more detail, breaking it down piece by piece, alongside some of the biggest unanswered questions heading into Raising Kanan Season 4. Now, just before we take a look at the synopsis once again, just as a reminder, during the release of the original teaser way back in September, they did also tease that the past was going to come back and haunt Kanan and his family. At the time, I said the most logical person that would come back and haunt them could be Unique, which was pretty much confirmed in the synopsis. In the riveting 4th season, slates have seemingly been wiped clean for Kanan, Raq and the rest of the Thomas family in pursuit of a fresh start. However, in the eye of a storm, one very dangerous obstacle looms large. Unique is alive. Unique makes a volatile and a violent return as he hunts to upend the lives of the Thomas family. Amidst the chaos, the Thomas family faces a truth that can no longer be denied. You are who you are. Although you may be capable of change, the fundamentals definitely remain the same, and sooner or later, you will be forced to confront the inescapable reality of your inherent nature. In Season 4, whether the family chooses to reject or embrace the truth may be the difference between life and death. So at the beginning of Season 4, it does seem like the slate is going to be wiped clean for the Thomases and they're going to start fresh. They're going to be a unit once again. We always kind of knew the siblings would be on good terms after what Lou went through towards the end of Season 3. He was becoming a real liability for the Thomases, but they weren't ever going to give up on their baby brother, no matter what was said and done in the past. And there were a lot of things that were said, especially between Raq and Lou. We saw Marvin and Raq put him up in a really expensive rehab center to help their brother sober up, clear his mind, and generally just take a break away from all the chaos in Queens. For a lot of these guys, they live their lives constantly looking over their shoulder, along with sleeping with one eye open, because that's the game they're in. You try and take one night off or take one eye off the game, it could genuinely cost you your life, just like it almost did for Lou in Season 1. But this facility was completely out the way where Lou could take as much time as he needs. Maybe there is a bit of a time jump at the beginning of Season 4, with Unique looking like he's stitched up. There could be potentially a small time jump, who knows. But Lou definitely will be back with the Thomases. I don't think he's going to be back in the game with them, at first anyway. I do think he'll get dragged into the streets again at some point, and B-Riller may also be potentially another reason as to how and why. But I fully expect Lou to focus on his music, focus on his grind and hustle, for at least a few episodes where things are probably going smooth for a change. And then, I fully expect things to change, especially for characters like Lou, and also maybe Jukebox, who Marvin was giving a gun to in the earlier teaser we saw back in September. Amidst the chaos, the Thomas family faces a truth that no longer can be denied. You are who you are. So this part of the synopsis basically means the Thomas family can no longer ignore their true identity, or the roles that they're going to have to play within the Thomas organization or their particular environment. In other words, Queens, the drug game, the dangerous world that they live in, the chaos and unpredictability that Unique is going to bring, and the chaos at the beginning of Season 4 might make some of them reflect and basically kind of reconsider their choices. For example, Lou wants to be in music, but at the same time, circumstances may drag him back into the streets. I think if they need him, he's definitely going to have to make a choice. Jukebox may want to join the army, but now she may want to stay and also be a help to Raq and Marvin, maybe by keeping an eye on Kanan. So even though these guys want to change and be different, it's going to be very difficult. Although you may be capable of change, the fundamentals remain the same, and sooner or later, you will be forced to confront the inescapable reality of your inherent nature. Now, this part of the synopsis basically refers to the theme nature versus nurture. We've spoken about this before on this channel when discussing a few themes in Power Book 2 Ghost, especially with Tariq in his Canonical Studies class. But how it's relevant to us heading into Raising Kanan Season 4? Again, sometimes you just can't leave. Once you're in the game, you're in. The world that you grew up in, the environment, the people that you're surrounded by, your life experiences, and what you've been through can pretty much dictate your path. Lou and Jukebox may try and distance themselves from the family or their nature, but at the end of the day, they are always going to be drawn back in. or just like the end of the synopsis teases, face the consequence of life or death. And this part of the synopsis just basically sums up the high stakes game that they're in. It's literally as simple as that. Every single decision they make, whether it's in relation to their business, whether it's music, or their relationships, for example, Jukebox and Aisha, we've seen what's happened in the past with Nicole. These guys have to embrace the reality that they're in, because if they don't, then unfortunately, it's gonna end in only one way, and that's death. That's something that Raq tried to warn Lou towards the end of season 1. There is no leaving. A classic example from Power is Ghost.
Because our life together was real, and with Angela, you could pretend to be something you never were.
Tasha summed it up perfectly. The life that Ghost was living with Angela was just a fantasy.
These suits don't change who you are, and that suit can't change who I am.
Again, Ghost chose to reject the truth. The fancy Tom Ford suits that he was wearing couldn't change who he was.
You want to look over your shoulder the rest of your life? So you're not looking over your shoulder just like that?
Once you're in, you're in. You're forever going to be looking over your shoulder. And those are just a few examples from Power. But all in all, the family really are going to be at crossroads. They're going to have to look at their identity. They're going to have a choice to either embrace it or reject it. And depending on what they do, may not just have consequences for themselves. Let's remember, innocent and loved ones do often get caught in the crossfire based on their actions and choices. For example, Ziza in season 2 and also Nicole back in season 1. So choices, identity, change, and survival. I think heading into season 4, those may end up being some of the main key themes of episode breakdowns going forward, but let's wait and see. Now, if the Thomases are going to be wiping the slate clean, does that mean Kanan's going to forgive Raq for getting rid of Detective Howard? I do think that's one of the major questions we do need answers to in the early parts of season 4. We need to see this conversation. We need to see Kanan's reaction, and we need to see how Raq justifies her action. At the warehouse, none of them had time to even think. They had to make their decisions and move. And that's what I mentioned in my breakdown for the images. Raq makes really tough decisions that other people don't want to make. She really is ruthless in her decision making and makes them quick. Once she makes her decision, it's done. Whether it was the right call or the wrong call, she'll live with it because she knows it's a part of the game. That's how you survive. But with them teasing the slate will be wiped clean, maybe Kanan does finally come around and Raq does have a second chance to make things right with Kanan. And on that note, I did have a question when I was posting some updates over on X, and it said, do you think with the slate clean, Kanan will work and get his product from Raq? And I thought this really was a great question. I said yeah, because I really don't see a world in which Raq lets Kanan work with another crew, for example Snaps and Pop. I think very similarly to Tasha in Power, where she knew Tariq was going to be in the game regardless, where she thought, okay, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it under my watch and also under my guidance. I think that's what Raq will be forced to do in season 4. Very similar to season 1 because she did know Kanan was going to be in the game. And we saw her teaching him how to cook, teaching him how to shoot a gun, making sure Scrappy kept one eye on him. But eventually the lies and manipulation just caught up with her relationship. So I do think that Kanan will work with Raq. I do think he will work with the Thomases, or maybe even for the Thomases. But I did also say, will it last? Probably not. At some point we do know Kanan will eventually find his way working for Breeze. And then we have to ask the question, where's Raq? Where's the Thomases? Where's Marvin and Lou when Breeze gets introduced? Crystal being pregnant. Now really I'm intrigued to see where the writers take this particular storyline, because if they do make Crystal the mother of Sean, then basically it tells us they have no issues in retconning some of the storylines we heard and know from back in Power. If that is the case, then we do have to take what we heard and saw in Power with a pinch of salt, because they'll probably follow through with a few things, but with some storylines they're gonna definitely change. So this is why I'm putting this one up as one of the biggest unanswered questions heading into season 4. In the eye of the storm, one very dangerous obstacle looms large. Unique is alive. Unique makes a volatile and a violent return as he hunts to upend the lives of the Thomas family. Now they will answer how Unique survived, that's for sure. I personally think it may potentially be in a flashback, or maybe we see where Unique is holding up, who's with him, who helped stitch him back up and help him survive. They'll definitely have to answer that question early in season 4. But then all hell is going to break loose. He's going to create absolute chaos for the Thomases. He's going to be violent, he's going to be volatile, unpredictable, and the worst thing is, none of the Thomases are even going to know Unique is alive. At least not at the beginning anyway, and that's what makes him even more dangerous. He can fuck with the Thomases organization, and they wouldn't even think twice to mention Unique's name. Very similar to Power with how Kanan was messing with Ghost's organization from within prison. He never once thought to look in Kanan's direction until he was released from prison. Kanan went under the radar for a very long time, and that's in essence gonna be Unique. He's gonna be an absolute menace and probably stay under the radar until he decides to kind of show his face. Now, I did also get asked another question. Why would Unique attack the Thomases when it was just Ronnie? And I guess the simple answer is, from his perspective, it looks pretty kind of suspect that the Thomases are meeting with Ronnie in a warehouse. They've taken his business under Stefano, and laying there in a pool of blood is both Detective Howard and Ronnie. Unique is also probably suffering from some kind of memory loss. He may not even remember exactly what happened to him. Everything may just be a blur. Or maybe he wanted to be the one to get rid of Ronnie and they took that from him. Joey Badass has gone on record to say his character Unique believes everybody conspired against him, and that's why he's going to go after the Thomases. So they definitely will answer some of these questions. How did he survive? I think that's going to be in a flashback, and the first move that he's going to make is to definitely attack the Thomases. Now, where do Snaps and Pop fit into the storyline for Season 4? I think the key thing to remember is, Ronnie was working for Snaps and Pop, and that's been taken from them. The pipeline that Ronnie had in Juliana, that was taken out by Rock, and then Kanan took out Ronnie, so you do have to assume they're not going to be too pleased. I wouldn't even be surprised if they teamed up with Unique. Snaps and Pop are old school, and as well as Unique being on his villain arc in Season 4, I wouldn't be surprised if Snaps and Pop became a big problem. And on death predictions, which I will make a separate breakdown on in a lot more detail. I'm not sure if I'm putting both Snaps and Pop on my death predictions for Season 4, but what I definitely wouldn't mind seeing is Snaps losing the love of his life, because that really would make him turn. He made a point of how they're both retired, but what if he was to lose Pop, whether it be in an accident or a targeted attack? You also have to ask the question for, of course, both Season 4 and 5. Where are all these players and queens when Breeze does eventually get introduced? He's going to be the big boss at some point who Kanan's going to be working for. Under them will also be Ghost and Tommy. So how I made the point about where are the Thomases going to be when Breeze does get introduced? Where will Snaps and Pop be? I think it all kind of depends on who introduces Kanan to Breeze, how he turns up, and what's the kind of link. Let's see how it all unfolds with Snaps, Pop, and also Unique. Now, this is someone who unfortunately is on my death predictions. I just don't see any way how Famous makes it out of Season 4. He's going to be under extreme pressure from law enforcement. He's definitely not built for the game. Kanan's obviously going to go down a much darker path. And the path that he's going down where he'll eventually meet Breeze and start working with a young Ghost and Tommy. Where does that leave Famous? If you want to go deeper, there has to be a reason why Kanan named his son Sean. So whether Famous snitches, becomes a CI. That's how I see law enforcement making their next move. However they play this with Famous going forward, he definitely is high up on my death predictions for Season 4. But that's where we are in terms of the synopsis for Season 4, the images, and a couple of big questions I think we should have answered in at least the first half of Season 4. We definitely need to keep our eyes on what they do with Crystal, because if that particular storyline from Power is retconned, then we're definitely going to have to be very cautious in terms of what we saw in Head back in Power. Now, with that being said, drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section. I do expect them to ramp up the teasers, images, and interviews over the next month. So when we get something new, you guys know I will be breaking it down. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.